Ever since Capcom released the Resident Evil 2 remake in 2019 with several alterations to the original canonical version of events, the question of the canonicity of 2make and its two follow-ups has lingered over the franchise. I'm here to discuss my own rollercoaster experience with trying to figure this out, and explain the final answer now that Requiem has given it to us. I was going to talk about it on A Line Through Time when I revisit the series timeline later this year, but I think this topic is best given its own video and discussed now. So let's go back to the beginning and see if we can untangle this yarn ball of a canon. Welcome to Cannonball. The first Resident Evil was replaced by its remake in 2002, as evidenced by that game's aesthetic being used for the majority of Resi 1 representation since, and new elements introduced in that game being acknowledged elsewhere, specifically Lisa Trevor appearing in the Umbrella Chronicles when she didn't exist in the original game. Initially, I assumed the same was true for the remakes of the second and third games, with the only real point of contention being whether or not Nikolai has time to escape Raccoon in 3make when Survivor indicated he'd survived. But then 4make released and completely threw me for a loop. In the reworked backstory, Jack Krauser lost his squad in Operation Javier 2 years prior, which Leon was not a part of, and became a zealous follower of Sadler as a result. Operation Javier is the new scenario in the Darkside Chronicles, depicting Leon and Krauser on that mission together with no squad, and setting up Krauser joining Wesker, not Sadler. All the changes made in the previous remakes only affected those stories. In the grand scheme, it doesn't matter how Ada was presumed dead or how Brad died, and even things like Nikolai's fate only affects notes in side games. The bigger picture remains unchanged, but this completely rewrites an entire side game. It's not the biggest problem, but it's the strongest evidence I had found to indicate the canonical status of the remakes. And then, Death Island released. Death Island came right on the heels of Infinite Darkness, which featured Leon and Claire with their remake voices. It ended with Leon and Claire having a big falling out over Leon's actions towards the end. Death Island then released, opting to keep Matt Mercer as Leon from the prior film Vendetta. In my eyes, whether or not they addressed this dramatic rift in the two's relationship would be another key factor here. Yes, over a decade passes between the two stories, so they have plenty of time to make up and move on, but to have this come right after that, with the same director and producers, not having them acknowledge it at all would feel weird. Imagine if 4 hadn't addressed Umbrella at all, when they'd been building up to the company's downfall for so long. You get it now, right? And, sure enough, no mention is made. Between the Operation Javier retcon, the flip-flopping of Leon's voice in CG productions, and the lack of explanation for how Leon and Claire are on such good terms after the previous production, I think that, whatever comes after, Capcom did at least consider them separate timelines around this time if nothing else. Now we move on to Requiem. Spoilers for the Raccoon section. Leon returns to the RPD and aesthetically, they've based it on the remake. From the alley stairway leading into the approach to the internal layout, it's all derived from the remake. Now, this alone isn't a smoking gun. Given that the remake is the version of Resi 2 that new and old fans alike have been playing for the last near decade, it only makes sense to use that layout, making the contrast between the station's two states much clearer than if the layout reflected the original. It allows the segment to hit for both those who've only played the remake and those who've played both. Upon entering the building, Leon flashes back to a few moments from that night in 1998. Naturally, the footage comes from the remake, which is a given. Using 1998 CGI, or worse PS1 polygonal models, would be downright jarring and silly. So you utilise footage from the much more recent remake that runs on the same engine as Requiem. You can keep the original canon while using remake footage by only showing footage that occurs the same in both versions. But Leon's in his remake outfit, Marvin is in the main hall and pulls a gun on Leon, and they show the death of Elliot, all of which are exclusive to the remake. There's a skeleton in the liquor hallway with a missing jaw, obviously the infamous liquor victim from the remake, and then Leon returns to Kendo's gun store and spends some time recalling the encounter he and Ada had with Kendo, which is an entirely different scenario compared to the original's Kendo scene. And it's even presented here as helping to motivate Leon for the rest of the story, so it being this version is important. This makes no sense as a sequel to the original Resi 2. After this, it is impossible to accept the 1998 Resident Evil 2 as still canonical. It has 100% been supplanted by the remake. And it does make sense, since the original is only preserved via PS1 emulation on the PS5 and the old PC port on GOG, so new fans will naturally gravitate towards the remake, not even touching the original, and thus making the remake canonical makes the most sense. It's safe to assume this also applies to Resi 3 and 4 as well, since canonising 2's remake and keeping the original 3 and 4 would be weird as hell. And Requiem, much like 4make, indicates that Leon met Marvin and it had a huge impact on him, making the remake's Leon A. Claire B scenario the canonical version of Resident Evil 2. So that question has been definitively cleared up by Capcom, meaning that whatever they choose to remake next will also be replacing the original. It's a shame they didn't remake 1 again this year, since it's the 30th anniversary and the year of the remake. It would fit right in. Doing it after this year will feel pointless. If you liked this video, why not subscribe and support me on Patreon like these fine people here? You get early access to new videos for just $1 a month. If not, then make sure to share it with your enemies so they can suffer along with you. Today's recommended video is Resident Evil Remakes, Just As Good As I Don't Remember Them by the Thrifty Typewriter. It's about the remakes. Watch it.